Welcome to today's Triple Z. The Triple Z podcast is a daily program that you can use to help you fall asleep each night. Just turn down the volume, lay back, relax, and enjoy as you fall asleep. We saw that our podcast was topping the charts in Finland, so we are going to read their Wikipedia entry. Let's learn about this interesting country in the dullest way possible. If you enjoy our program, please be sure to write us a review on your podcast platform and share us with a friend. You both might sleep just a little better at night. Our website is Triple Z, that's 3zs.media. You can also like and share our content on Facebook or our Instagram account ZZZ Media Podcast. Music for today's episode was provided by the Sleep channel on Spotify. Finland, officially the Republic of Finland, is a Nordic country in Northern Europe. It borders Sweden to the northwest, Norway to the north, and Russia to the east, with the Gulf of Bothnia to the west and the Gulf of Finland to the south, across from Estonia. Finland covers an area of 338,145 square kilometers, 130,559 square miles, with a population of 5.6 million. Helsinki is the capital and largest city. The vast majority of the population are ethnic Finns. Finnish and Swedish are the official languages, Swedish being the native language of 5.2% of the population. Finland's climate varies from humid continental in the south to boreal in the north. The land cover is primarily a boreal forest biome with more than 180,000 recorded lakes. Finland was first inhabited around 900 BC after the last glacial period. The Stone Age introduced several different ceramic styles and cultures. The Bronze Age and Iron Age were characterized by contacts with other cultures in Fennoscandia and the Baltic region. From the late 13th century, Finland became a part of Sweden as a consequence of the Northern Crusades. In 1809, as a result of the Finnish War, Finland became part of the Russian Empire as the autonomous Grand Duchy of Finland, during which Finnish art flourished and the idea of independence began to take hold. In 1906, Finland became the first European state to grant universal suffrage and the first in the world to give all adult citizens the right to run for public office. After the 1917 Russian Revolution, Finland declared independence from Russia. In 1918, the fledgling state was divided by the Finnish Civil War. During World War II, Finland fought the Soviet Union in the Winter War and the Continuation War, and Nazi Germany in the Lapland War. It subsequently lost parts of its territory, but maintained its independence. Finland largely remained an agrarian country until the 1950s. After World War II, it rapidly industrialized and developed an advanced economy while building an extensive welfare state based on the Nordic model. The country soon enjoyed widespread prosperity and a high per capita income. During the Cold War, Finland adopted an official policy of neutrality. Finland joined the European Union in 1995, the Eurozone at its inception in 1999, and NATO in 2023. It is also a member of the United Nations, the Nordic Council, the Schengen Area, the Council of Europe, the World Trade Organization, and the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, OECD. Finland performs highly in metrics of national performance, including education, economic competitiveness, civil liberties, quality of life, and human development. The area that is now Finland was settled in, at the latest, around 8,500 BC during the Stone Age towards the end of the last glacial period. The artifacts the first settlers left behind present characteristics that are shared with those found in Estonia, Russia, and Norway. The earliest people were hunter-gatherers, using stone tools. The first pottery appeared in 5200 BC when the comb ceramic culture was introduced. The arrival of the cordwood culture in southern coastal Finland between 300 and 2500 BC may have coincided with the start of agriculture. Even with the introduction of agriculture, hunting and fishing continued to be important parts of the subsistence economy. In the Bronze Age, permanent all-year-round cultivation and animal husbandry spread, but the cold climate phase slowed the change. The Cimmerbino phenomenon brought the first bronze artifacts to the region and possibly also the Finno-Ugric languages. Commercial contacts that had so far mostly been to Estonia started to extend to Scandinavia. Domestic manufacture of bronze artifacts started 1300 BC. In the Iron Age, population grew. Finland proper was the most densely populated area. Commercial contacts in the Baltic Sea region grew and extended during the 8th and 9th centuries. Main exports from Finland were furs, slaves, castoreum, and falcons to European courts. Imports included silk and other fabrics, jewelry, Ulfbert swords, and, in lesser extent, glass. Production of iron started approximately in 500 BC. At the end of the 9th century, indigenous artifact culture, especially weapons and women's jewelry, had more common local features than ever before. This has been interpreted to be expressing common Finnish identity. An early form of Finnic languages spread to the Baltic Sea region approximately 1900 BC. Common Finnic language was spoken around Gulf of Finland 2,000 years ago. The dialects from which the modern-day Finnish language was developed came into existence during the Iron Age. Although distantly related, the Sami people retained the hunter-gatherer lifestyle longer than the Finns. The Sami cultural identity and the Sami language have survived in Lapland, the northernmost province. The name Suomi, Finnish for Finland, has uncertain origins, but a common etymology with same, the Sami, has been suggested. In the earliest historical sources, from the 12th and 13th centuries, the term Finland refers to the coastal region around Turku. This region later became known as Finland proper in distinction from the country name Finland. See also etymology of Finns. The 12th and 13th centuries were a violent time in the northern Baltic Sea. The Livonian Crusade was ongoing and the Finnish tribes such as the Tavastans and Karelians were in frequent conflicts with Novgorod and with each other. Also, during the 12th and 13th centuries, several crusades from the Catholic realms of the Baltic Sea area were made against the Finnish tribes. Danes waged at least 3 crusades to Finland in 1187 or slightly earlier, in 1191 and in 1202, and Swedes, possibly the so-called Second Crusade to Finland in 1249 against Tavastans and the Third Crusade to Finland in 1293 against the Karelians. The so-called First Crusade to Finland, possibly in 1155, is most likely an unreal event. As a result of the Crusades, mostly with the Second Crusade led by Berger Jarl, and the colonization of some Finnish coastal areas with Christian Swedish population during the Middle Ages, Finland gradually became part of the Kingdom of Sweden and the sphere of influence of the Catholic Church. Under Sweden, Finland was annexed as part of the cultural order of Western Europe. Swedish was the dominant language of the nobility, administration, and education. Finnish was chiefly a language for the peasantry, clergy, and local courts in predominantly Finnish-speaking areas. During the Protestant Reformation, the Finns gradually converted to Lutheranism. In the 16th century, a bishop and Lutheran reformer Michael Agricola published the first written works in Finnish, and Finland's current capital city, Helsinki, was founded by King Gustav Vasa in 1555. The first university in Finland, the Royal Academy of Turku, was established by Queen Christina of Sweden at the proposal of Count Purbrahe in 1640. The Finns reaped a reputation in the 30 Years' War, 1618 to 1648, as a well-trained cavalryman called Hakapelijohtaja. Finland suffered a severe famine in 1695 to 1697, during which about one-third of the Finnish population died, and a devastating plague a few years later. In the 18th century, wars between Sweden and Russia twice led to the occupation of Finland by Russian forces, times known to the Finns as the Greater Wrath, 1714 to 1721, and the Lesser Wrath, 1742 to 1743. It is estimated that almost an entire generation of young men was lost during the Great Wrath, due mainly to the destruction of homes and farms and the burning of Helsinki. The Swedish era ended in the Finnish War in 1809. On March 29, 1809, having been taken over by the armies of Alexander I of Russia, Finland became an autonomous Grand Duchy in the Russian Empire with the recognition given at the Diet held in Porvoo. This situation lasted until the end of 1917. In 1812, Alexander I incorporated the Russian Vyborg province into the Grand Duchy of Finland. In 1854, Finland became involved in Russia's involvement in the Crimean War when the British and French navies bombed the Finnish coast and Åland during the so-called Åland War. Though the Swedish language was still widely spoken, during this period the Finnish language began to gain more recognition. From the 1860s onwards, a strong Finnish nationalist movement known as the Fennoman movement grew. One of its most prominent leading figures of the movement was the philosopher and politician J. V. Snellman, who pushed for the stabilization of the status of the Finnish language and its own currency, the Finnish marka, in the Grand Duchy of Finland. Milestones included the publication of what would become Finland's national epic, the Kalevala, in 1835, and the Finnish languages achieving equal legal status with Swedish in 1892. In the spirit of the notion of Adolf Ivar Arvidsson, 1791 to 1858, we are not Swedes, we do not want to become Russians, let us therefore be Finns. A Finnish national identity was established. Still, there was no genuine independence movement in Finland until the early 20th century. The Finnish famine of 1866 to 1868 occurred after freezing temperatures in early September ravaged crops, and it killed approximately 15% of the population, making it one of the worst famines in European history. The famine led the Russian Empire to ease financial regulations, and investment rose in the following decades. Economic development was rapid. The gross domestic product, GDP, per capita was still half of that of the United States and a third of that of Britain. From 1869 until 1917, the Russian Empire pursued a policy known as the Russification of Finland. This policy was interrupted between 1905 and 1908. In 1906, universal suffrage was adopted in the Grand Duchy of Finland. However, the relationship between the Grand Duchy and the Russian Empire soured when the Russian government made moves to restrict Finnish autonomy. For example, universal suffrage was, in practice, virtually meaningless, since the Tsar did not have to approve any of the laws adopted by the Finnish parliament. The desire for independence gained ground, first among radical liberals and socialists, driven in part by a declaration called the February Manifesto by the last Tsar of the Russian Empire, Nicholas II, on February 15, 1899. After the 1917 February Revolution, the position of Finland as a part of the Russian Empire was questioned, mainly by Social Democrats. The Finnish parliament, controlled by Social Democrats, passed the so-called Power Act to give the highest authority to the parliament. This was rejected by the Russian Provisional Government, which decided to dissolve the parliament. New elections were conducted, in which right-wing parties won with a slim majority. Some Social Democrats refused to accept the result and still claimed that the dissolution of the parliament, and thus the ensuing elections, were extra-legal. The two nearly equally powerful political blocs, the right-wing parties and the Social Democratic Party, were highly antagonized. The October Revolution in Russia changed the geopolitical situation once more. Suddenly, the right-wing parties in Finland started to reconsider their decision to block the transfer of the highest executive power from the Russian government to Finland, as the Bolsheviks took power in Russia. The right-wing government, led by Prime Minister P. E. Sinhofed, presented the Declaration of Independence on December 4, 1917, which was officially approved on December 6 by the Finnish parliament. The Russian Soviet Federative Socialist Republic, RSFSR, led by Vladimir Lenin, recognized independence on January 4, 1918. On January 27, 1918, the government began to disarm the Russian forces in Pojama. The socialists gained control of southern Finland and Helsinki, but the white government continued in exile from Vasa. This sparked a brief but bitter civil war. The whites, who were supported by Imperial Germany, prevailed over the Reds and their self-proclaimed Finnish Socialist Workers' Republic. After the war, tens of thousands of Reds were interned in camps, where thousands were executed or died from malnutrition and disease. Deep social and political enmity was sown between the Reds and Whites and would last until the Winter War and even beyond. The Civil War and the 1918 to 1920 activist expeditions called kinship wars into Soviet Russia strained Eastern relations. After brief experimentation with monarchy, when an attempt to make Prince Frederick Charles of Hesse King of Finland was unsuccessful, Finland became a presidential republic, with K. J. Ståhlberg elected as its first president in 1919. As a liberal nationalist with a legal background, Ståhlberg anchored the state in liberal democracy, supported the rule of law, and embarked on internal reforms. Finland was also one of the first European countries to strongly aim for equality for women, with Minna Salampa serving in Väinö Tanner's cabinet as the first female minister in Finnish history in 1926 to 1927. The Finnish-Russian border was defined in 1920 by the Treaty of Tartu, largely following the historic border but granting Pechenga, Finnish, Petsamo, and its Barents Sea harbor to Finland. Finnish democracy did not experience any Soviet coup attempts and likewise survived the anti-communist Lapua movement. In 1917, the population was 3 million. Credit-based land reform was enacted after the Civil War, increasing the proportion of the capital-owning population. About 70% of workers were occupied in agriculture and 10% in industry. The Soviet Union launched the Winter War on November 30, 1939 in an effort to annex Finland. The Finnish Democratic Republic was established by Joseph Stalin at the beginning of the war to govern Finland after Soviet conquest. The Red Army was defeated in numerous battles, notably at the Battle of Suomussalmi. After 2 months of negligible progress on the battlefield, as well as severe losses of men and material, the Soviets put an end to the Finnish Democratic Republic in late January 1940 and recognized the legal Finnish government as the legitimate government of Finland. Soviet forces began to make progress in February and reached Vyborg in March. The fighting came to an end on March 13, 1940 with the signing of the Moscow Peace Treaty. Finland had successfully defended its independence, but ceded 9% of its territory to the Soviet Union. Hostilities resumed in June 1941 with the Continuation War, when Finland aligned with Germany following the latter's invasion of the Soviet Union. The primary aim was to recapture the territory lost to the Soviets scarcely 1 year before. Finnish forces occupied East Karelia from 1941 to 1944. Finnish resistance to the Vyborg-Petrozavodsk offensive in the summer of 1944 led to a standstill, and the two sides reached an armistice. This was followed by the Lapland War of 1944 to 1945, when Finland fought retreating German forces in northern Finland. Famous war heroes of the aforementioned wars include Simo Häyhä, Arne Juutilainen, and Lauri Torni. The armistice and treaty signed with the Soviet Union in 1944 and 1948 included Finnish obligations, restraints, and reparations, as well as further Finnish territorial concessions in addition to those in the Moscow Peace Treaty. As a result of the two wars, Finland ceded Petsamo, along with parts of Finnish Karelia and Salla. This amounted to 12% of Finland's land area, 20% of its industrial capacity, its second largest city, Vyborg, Viipuri, and the ice-free port of Lienäkämari, Lainaamari. Almost the whole Finnish population, some 400,000 people, fled these areas. Finland lost 97,000 soldiers and was forced to pay war reparations of $300 million, $3.7 billion in 2021. Nevertheless, it avoided occupation by Soviet forces and managed to retain its independence. For a few decades after 1944, the Communists were a strong political party. The Soviet Union persuaded Finland to reject Marshall Plan aid. However, in the hope of preserving Finland's independence, the United States provided secret development aid and helped the Social Democratic Party. Establishing trade with the Western powers, such as the United Kingdom, and paying reparations to the Soviet Union produced a transformation of Finland from a primarily agrarian economy to an industrialized one. Valmet, originally a shipyard, then several metal workshops, was founded to create materials for war reparations. After the reparations had been paid off, Finland continued to trade with the Soviet Union in the framework of bilateral trade. In 1950, 46% of Finnish workers worked in agriculture and a third lived in urban areas. The new jobs in manufacturing, services, and trade quickly attracted people to the towns. The average number of births per woman declined from a baby boom peak of 3.5 in 1947 to 1.5 in 1973. When baby boomers entered the workforce, the economy did not generate jobs quickly enough, and hundreds of thousands emigrated to the more industrialized Sweden, with emigration peaking in 1969 and 1970. Finland took part in trade liberalization in the World Bank, the International Monetary Fund, and the General Agreement on Tariffs and Trade. Officially claiming to be neutral, Finland lay in the gray zone between the Western countries and the Soviet bloc during the Cold War. The military YYA Treaty, Finno-Soviet Pact of Friendship, Cooperation, and Mutual Assistance, gave the Soviet Union some leverage in Finnish domestic politics. This was extensively exploited by President Urho Kekkonen against his opponents. He maintained an effective monopoly on Soviet relations from 1956 on, which was crucial for his continued popularity. In politics, there was a tendency to avoid any policies and statements that could be interpreted as anti-Soviet. This phenomenon was given the name Finlandization by the West German press. Finland maintained a market economy. Various industries benefited from trade privileges with the Soviets. Economic growth was rapid in the post-war era, and by 1975 Finland's GDP per capita was the 15th highest in the world. In the 1970s and 1980s, Finland built one of the most extensive welfare states in the world. Finland negotiated with the European Economic Community, EEC, a predecessor of the European Union, a treaty that mostly abolished customs duties towards the EEC starting from 1977. In 1981, President Urho Kekkonen's failing health forced him to retire after holding office for 25 years. Miscalculated macroeconomic decisions, a banking crisis, the collapse of its largest trading partner, the Soviet Union, and a global economic downturn caused a deep early 1990s recession in Finland. The depression bottomed out in 1993, and Finland saw steady economic growth for more than 10 years. After the collapse of the Soviet Union, Finland began increasing integration with the West. Finland joined the European Union in 1995 and the Eurozone in 1999. Much of the late 1990s economic growth was fueled by the success of the mobile phone manufacturer Nokia. The Finnish population elected Tarja Halonen in the 2000 presidential election, making her the first female president of Finland. Financial crises paralyzed Finland's exports in 2008, resulting in weaker economic growth throughout the decade. Sauli Niinisto has subsequently been elected the president of Finland since 2012. Finland's support for NATO rose enormously after the 2022 Russian invasion of Ukraine. Prior to February 2022, polling showed a narrow but definitive majority in opposition to NATO membership. By April, a supermajority were in favor of membership. On May 11, 2022, Finland entered into a mutual security pact with the United Kingdom. On May 12, Finland's president and prime minister called for NATO membership without delay. Subsequently, on May 17, the Parliament of Finland decided by a vote of 188 to 8 that it supported Finland's accession to NATO. Finland became a member of NATO on April 4, 2023. Lying approximately between latitudes 60 degrees and 70 degrees north and longitudes 20 degrees and 32 degrees east, Finland is one of the world's northernmost countries. Of world capitals, only Reykjavik lies more to the north than Helsinki. The distance from the southernmost point, Hanko in Uusimaa, to the northernmost, Nuurgam in Lapland, is 1,160 kilometers, 720 miles. Finland has about 168,000 lakes, of area larger than 500 square meters or 0.12 acres, and 179,000 islands. Its largest lake, Saimaa, is the fourth largest in Europe. The Finnish lakeland is the area with the most lakes in the country. Many of the major cities in the area, most notably Tampere, Jyväskylä, and Kuopio, are located near the large lakes. The greatest concentration of islands is found in the southwest, in the archipelago sea between continental Finland and the main island of Åland. Much of the geography of Finland is a result of the Ice Age. The glaciers were thicker and lasted longer in Finnoscandia compared with the rest of Europe. Their eroding effects have left the Finnish landscape mostly flat with few hills and fewer mountains. Its highest point, Pahalti at 1,324 meters, 4,344 feet, is found in the extreme north of Lapland at the border between Finland and Norway. The highest mountain whose peak is entirely in Finland is Ridnitsoka at 1,316 meters, 4,318 feet, directly adjacent to Halti. The retreating glaciers have left the land with morainic deposits and formations of eskers. These are ridges of stratified gravel and sand running northwest to southeast, where the ancient edge of the glacier once lay. Among the biggest of these are the three Salpaselka ridges that run across southern Finland. Having been compressed under the enormous weight of the glaciers, terrain in Finland is rising due to the post-glacial rebound. The effect is strongest around the Gulf of Bothnia, where land steadily rises about 1 centimeter, 0.4 in, a year. As a result, the old sea bottom turns little by little into dry land. The surface area of the country is expanding by about 7 square kilometers, 2.7 square miles, annually. Relatively speaking, Finland is rising from the sea. The landscape is covered mostly by coniferous taiga forests and fens, with little cultivated land. Of the total area, 10% is lakes, rivers, and ponds, and 78% is forest. The forest consists of pine, spruce, birch, and other species. Finland is the largest producer of wood in Europe and among the largest in the world. The most common type of rock is granite. It is a ubiquitous part of the scenery, visible wherever there is no soil cover. Moraine or till is the most common type of soil, covered by a thin layer of humus of biological origin. Podzol profile development is seen in most forest soils except where drainage is poor. Glacials and peat bogs occupy poorly drained areas. Phytogeographically, Finland is shared between the Arctic, Central European, and Northern European provinces of the circumboreal region within the Boreal Kingdom. According to the WWF, the territory of Finland can be subdivided into 3 ecoregions: the Scandinavian and Russian taiga, Sarmatic mixed forests, and Scandinavian montane birch forest and grasslands. Taiga covers most of Finland from northern regions of southern provinces to the north of Lapland. On the southwestern coast, south of the Helsinki-Rauma line, forests are characterized by mixed forests that are more typical in the Baltic region. In the extreme north of Finland, near the tree line and Arctic Ocean, montane birch forests are common. Finland had a 2018 Forest Landscape Integrity Index mean score of May 8, 10, ranking at 109th globally out of 172 countries. Similarly, Finland has a diverse and extensive range of fauna. There are at least 60 native mammalian species, 248 breeding bird species, over 70 fish species, and 11 reptile and frog species present today, many migrating from neighboring countries thousands of years ago. Large and widely recognized wildlife mammals found in Finland are the brown bear, gray wolf, wolverine, and elk. 3 of the more striking birds are the Hooper swan, a large European swan, and the national bird of Finland, the western capercaillie, a large, black-plumaged member of the grouse family, and the Eurasian eagle owl. The latter is considered an indicator of old-growth forest connectivity and has been declining because of landscape fragmentation. Around 24,000 species of insects are prevalent in Finland, some of the most common being hornets, with tribes of beetles such as the Onsidarini also being common. The most common breeding birds are the willow warbler, common chaffinch, and redwing. Of some 70 species of freshwater fish, the northern pike, perch, and others are plentiful. Atlantic salmon remains the favorite of fly rod enthusiasts. The endangered Saimarine seal, one of only 3 lake seal species in the world, exists only in the Saimaa Lake system of southeastern Finland, down to only 390 seals today. The species has become the emblem of the Finnish Association for Nature Conservation. A third of Finland's land area originally consisted of moorland. About half of this area has been drained for cultivation over the past centuries. The main factor influencing Finland's climate is the country's geographical position between the 60th and 70th northern parallels in the Eurasian continent's coastal zone. In the Köppen climate classification, the whole of Finland lies in the boreal zone, characterized by warm summers and freezing winters. Within the country, the temperatureness varies considerably between the southern coastal regions and the extreme north, showing characteristics of both a maritime and a continental climate. Finland is near enough to the Atlantic Ocean to be continuously warmed by the Gulf Stream. The Gulf Stream combines with the moderating effects of the Baltic Sea and numerous inland lakes to explain the unusually warm climate compared with other regions that share the same latitude, such as Alaska, Siberia, and southern Greenland. Winters in southern Finland, when mean daily temperature remains below 0 degrees Celsius or 32 degrees Fahrenheit, are usually about 100 days long, and in the inland the snow typically covers the land from about late November to April, and on the coastal areas such as Helsinki, snow often covers the land from late December to late March. Even in the south, the harshest winter nights can see the temperatures fall to minus 30 degrees Celsius, minus 22 degrees Fahrenheit, although in coastal areas like Helsinki, temperatures below minus 30 degrees Celsius, minus 22 degrees Fahrenheit are rare. Climatic summers, when mean daily temperature remains above 10 degrees Celsius or 50 degrees Fahrenheit, in southern Finland last from about late May to mid-September, and in the inland, the warmest days of July can reach over 35 degrees Celsius, 95 degrees Fahrenheit. Although most of Finland lies on the taiga belt, the southernmost coastal regions are sometimes classified as hemiboreal. In northern Finland, particularly in Lapland, the winters are long and cold, while the summers are relatively warm but short. On the most severe winter days in Lapland can see the temperature fall to minus 45 degrees Celsius, minus 49 degrees Fahrenheit. The winter of the north lasts for about 200 days with permanent snow cover from about mid-October to early May. Summers in the north are quite short, only 2 to 3 months, but can still see maximum daily temperatures above 25 degrees Celsius, 77 degrees Fahrenheit during heat waves. No part of Finland has Arctic tundra, but alpine tundra can be found at the fells Lapland. The Finnish climate is suitable for cereal farming only in the southernmost regions, while the northern regions are suitable for animal husbandry. A quarter of Finland's territory lies within the Arctic Circle, and the midnight sun can be experienced for more days the farther north one travels. At Finland's northernmost point, the sun does not set for 73 consecutive days during summer and does not rise at all for 51 days during winter. Finland consists of 19 regions, maakunta. The counties are governed by regional councils which serve as forums of cooperation for the municipalities of a county. The main tasks of the counties are regional planning and development of enterprise and education. In addition, the public health services are usually organized based on counties. Regional councils are elected by municipal councils, each municipality sending representatives in proportion to its population. In addition to intermunicipal cooperation, which is the responsibility of regional councils, each county has a state employment and economic development center which is responsible for the local administration of labor, agriculture, fisheries, forestry, and entrepreneurial affairs. Historically, counties are divisions of historical provinces of Finland, areas that represent local dialects and culture more accurately. 6 regional state administrative agencies are responsible for one of the counties called Alue in Finnish. In addition, Åland was designated a 7th county. The county of Eastern Uusimaa, Itä-Uusimaa, was consolidated with Uusimaa on January 1, 2011. The fundamental administrative divisions of the country are the municipalities, which may also call themselves towns or cities. They account for half of the public spending. Spending is financed by municipal income tax, state subsidies, and other revenue. As of 2021, there are 309 municipalities, and most have fewer than 6,000 residents. In addition to municipalities, 2 intermediate levels are defined. Municipalities cooperate in 70 subregions and 19 counties. These are governed by the member municipalities and have only limited powers. The autonomous province of Åland has a permanent democratically elected regional council. Sami people have a semi-autonomous Sami native region in Lapland for issues on language and culture. In the following chart, the number of inhabitants includes those living in the entire municipality, kunta/common, not just in the built-up area. The land area is given in km2, and the density in inhabitants per km2 land area. The figures are as of February 28, 2023. The capital region, comprising Helsinki, Vantaa, Espoo, and Kauniainen, forms a continuous conurbation of over 1.1 million people. However, common administration is limited to voluntary cooperation of all municipalities, e.g. in Helsinki Metropolitan Area Council. The Constitution of Finland defines the political system. Finland is a parliamentary republic within the framework of a representative democracy. The Prime Minister is the country's most powerful person. Citizens can run and vote in parliamentary, municipal, presidential, and European Union elections. Finland's head of state is the President of the Republic. Finland has had for most of its independence a semi-presidential system of government, but in the last few decades the powers of the president have become more circumscribed, and consequently the country is now considered a parliamentary republic. A new constitution enacted in 2000 have made the presidency a primarily ceremonial office that appoints the prime minister as elected by parliament, appoints and dismisses the other ministers of the Finnish government on the recommendation of the prime minister, opens parliamentary sessions, and confers state honors. Nevertheless, the president remains responsible for Finland's foreign relations, including the making of war and peace, but excluding matters related to the European Union. Moreover, the president exercises supreme command over the Finnish Defense Forces as commander-in-chief. In the exercise of his or her foreign and defense powers, the president is required to consult the Finnish government, but the government's advice is not binding. In addition, the president has several domestic reserve powers, including the authority to veto legislation, to grant pardons, and to appoint several public officials. The president is also required by the Constitution to dismiss individual ministers or the entire government upon a parliamentary vote of no confidence. The president is directly elected via runoff voting and may serve for a maximum of 2 consecutive 6-year terms. The current president is Sauli Niinistö, who took office on March 1, 2012. His predecessors were Carlo Juho Ståhlberg, 1919–1925, Lori Christian Relander, 1925–1931, Per Evine Sven Hufvud, 1931–1937, Kyösti Kallio, 1937–1940, Risto Redi, 1940 to 1944, Carl Gustav Emil Mannerheim, 1944 to 1946, Juho Kusti Paasikivi, 1946 to 1956, Urho Kekkonen, 1956 to 1982, Mauno Koivisto, 1982 to 1994, Martti Ahtisaari, 1994 to 2000, and Tarja Halonen, 2000 to 2012. The 200-member unicameral Parliament of Finland, Finnish Eduskunta, exercises supreme legislative authority in the country. It may alter the constitution and ordinary laws, dismiss the cabinet, and override presidential vetoes. Its acts are not subject to judicial review. The constitutionality of new laws is assessed by the Parliament's Constitutional Law Committee. The Parliament is elected for a term of 4 years using the proportional dot method within several multi-seat constituencies through the most open list multi-member districts. Various Parliament committees listen to experts and prepare legislation. Significant parliamentary parties are Centre Party, Christian Democrats, Finns Party, Green League, Left Alliance, National Coalition Party, Social Democrats, and Swedish People's Party. After parliamentary elections, the parties negotiate among themselves on forming a new cabinet, the Finnish government, which then has to be approved by a simple majority vote in the parliament. The cabinet can be dismissed by a parliamentary vote of no confidence, although this rarely happens, as the parties represented in the cabinet usually make up a majority in the parliament. The cabinet exercises most executive powers and originates most of the bills that the parliament then debates and votes on. It is headed by the Prime Minister of Finland and consists of him or her, other ministers, and the Chancellor of Justice. Each minister heads his or her ministry, or, in some cases, has responsibility for a subset of a ministry's policy. After the Prime Minister, the most powerful minister is often the Minister of Finance. As no one party ever dominates the parliament, Finnish cabinets are multi-party coalitions. As a rule, the post of Prime Minister goes to the leader of the biggest party and that of the Minister of Finance to the leader of the second biggest. The Orpo cabinet is the incumbent 77th government of Finland. It took office on June 20, 2023. The cabinet is headed by Petteri Orpo and is a coalition between the National Coalition Party, Finns Party, the Swedish People's Party, and the Christian Democrats. The judicial system of Finland is a civil law system divided between courts with regular civil and criminal jurisdiction and administrative courts with jurisdiction over litigation between individuals and the public administration. Finnish law is codified and based on Swedish law and, in a wider sense, civil law or Roman law. The court system for civil and criminal jurisdiction consists of local courts, regional appellate courts, and the Supreme Court. The administrative branch of justice consists of administrative courts and the Supreme Administrative Court. In addition to the regular courts, there are a few special courts in certain branches of administration. There is also a High Court of Impeachment for criminal charges against certain high-ranking office holders. Around 92% of residents have confidence in Finland's security institutions. The overall crime rate of Finland is not high in the EU context. Some crime types are above average, notably the high homicide rate for Western Europe. A day fine system is in effect and also applied to offenses such as speeding. Finland has a very low number of corruption charges. Transparency International ranks Finland as one of the least corrupt countries in Europe. According to the 2012 Constitution, the President, currently Sauli Niinisto, leads foreign policy in cooperation with the government, except that the President has no role in EU affairs. In 2008, President Martti Ahtisaari was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize. The Finnish Defense Forces consist of a cadre of professional soldiers, mainly officers and technical personnel, currently serving conscripts, and a large reserve. The standard readiness strength is 34,700 people in uniform, of which 25% are professional soldiers. A universal male conscription is in place, under which all male Finnish nationals above 18 years of age serve for 6 to 12 months of armed service or 12 months of civilian, non-armed service. Voluntary post-conscription overseas peacekeeping service is popular, and troops serve around the world in UN, NATO, and EU missions. Women are allowed to serve in all combat arms. In 2022, 1211 women entered voluntary military service. The Army consists of a highly mobile field army backed up by local defense units. With a high capability of military personnel, arsenal, and homeland defense willingness, Finland is one of Europe's militarily strongest countries. Finnish defense expenditure per capita is one of the highest in the European Union. The branches of the military are the Army, the Navy, and the Air Force. The Border Guard is under the Ministry of the Interior but can be incorporated into the Defense Forces when required for defense readiness. Finland became a member of NATO on April 4, 2023, though it participated in the NATO Response Force before becoming a member. Finland also contributes to the EU Battle Group. Finland sent personnel to the Kosovo Force and the International Security Assistance Force in Afghanistan. Finland has one of the world's most extensive welfare systems, one that guarantees decent living conditions for all residents. The welfare system was created almost entirely during the first 3 decades after World War II. Finland's history has been harsher than the histories of the other Nordic countries, but not harsh enough to bar the country from following its path of social development. Section 6 of the Finnish Constitution states, "No one shall be placed in a different position on situation of sex, age, origin, language, religion, belief, opinion, state of health, disability, or any other personal reason without an acceptable reason." Finland has been ranked above average among the world's countries in democracy, press freedom, and human development. Amnesty International has expressed concern regarding some issues in Finland, such as the imprisonment of conscientious objectors and societal discrimination against Romani people and members of other ethnic and linguistic minorities. In the report of the European Umbrella Organization ILG Europe published in May 2023, Finland ranked 6th in a European comparison of LGBTQ+ rights.